So now I thought we should check in on the much ballyhooed invasion of the Antifa super soldiers. I'd like to take you back to May 31st, which, now that every single day is like an eternity in a new hell, seems like, I don't know, ages ago. But just back on May 31st, the leader of the current regime put out a tweet, because there's always a tweet, letting us know that the United States of America would be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Dun dun dun. Hopefully I don't need to waste everybody's time and go into the very basics about, how Antifa is just a shorten for the term anti-fascist, would be, against fascism. But okay, so I'm not even going to get into that. However, I would like to point out that once the uprising began in Minneapolis and protests started propping up everywhere, Trump went back to his old basic trope of everybody who doesn't agree with me is part of the radical left. And if you go out to a protest, then you're an Antifa super soldier who's on the front lines of the radical left. And this is a common refrain because if you remember, just a few days ago, there was that nice 75-year-old man who had picked up a Riot helmet and went to go hand it back to the police in Buffalo, and then they threw him to the ground, cracked his skull into the concrete, and he laid down there with blood pouring out of his ears. And when another cop went to go help him up, the other two knocked him down, just pushed the cop along, and they just wandered off and they left him in the middle of the street. But hey, Donald Trump wants you to know that the Buffalo protester who was shoved by the police could be an Antifa provocateur. 75-year-old man pushed away after appearing to scan police communications in order to black out the equipment. And Donald Trump got this report from OANN, which is kind of like The Blaze, but with even less believability. I don't know. I would just assume at this point OANN is like the acting press secretary. I watched, he fell harder than was pushed, was aiming scanner, could be a setup. No, dude, he was a 75-year-old man who got pushed by like a 240-pound aggro cop in full riot gear on concrete. But here we go. If you're white and you're participating in protesting against the government or the police, or even if you're standing up for black and brown people or people in marginalized communities, then you too may very well be an Antifa super soldier. Dun dun dun. So let's check in and see what happened with all these white Antifa super soldiers at protests around the country. Let's take a look. Let's see what's up. White supremacist infiltration of U.S. police forces. Fact-checking National Security Advisor O'Brien. Let's see. FBI intelligence assessment entitled White Supremacist Infiltration of Law Enforcement raised alarm over white supremacist groups' interest in infiltrating law enforcement communities or recruiting law enforcement personnel. The report, based on FBI investigations and open sources, warned, for example, that skinhead groups were actively encouraging their members to become, quote, ghost skins within law enforcement agencies, a term the report said white supremacists use to describe members who avoid overt display of their beliefs to blend in society and covertly advance white supremacist causes. So, not the Antifas then. Okay. Well, let's see what else we need to know. White supremacist provocateurs are tipping America's protest into a race war. Well, okay. White supremacists are using the same playbook as the race war accelerationists of the 1960s, but it's coinciding with widespread unemployment, a deep recession, and an ambiguous administration in the White House. Well, that doesn't sound good. Okay. Really? Really? Do you know how horrible you have to be to get kicked off of Facebook? Like, I see 10 white nationalist posts a day on Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg's like, oh, I don't know if we should be so hasty. Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't remove them. Maybe we should hear them out. Okay, that's how bad it is. Facebook removes white nationalist accounts encouraging guns at anti-racist protests. Social media company said Friday it removed sites affiliated with the Proud Boys and American Guard, which have been designated as extremist hate groups by both the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. Facebook removed roughly 30 accounts and 30 Instagram accounts belonging to Proud Boys, which had appeared at white supremacist rallies like the Charlottesville demonstration in 2017. They also removed approximately 80 accounts and roughly 50 Instagram accounts from American Guard, who have advocated violence against immigrant and refugee communities. Both groups have previously been banned from Facebook. Amazing how they keep getting back on there, though, huh? Kinda bizarre. We saw that these groups were planning to rally supporters and members to physically go on the ground to the protests and, in some cases, preparing to go with weapons. Wow. So, also not the dreaded Antifa super soldiers. Kind of crazy how that happened. But I'm sure at some point the Antifas showed up, right? Go! White nationalists are using fake Antifa Twitter accounts to disrupt protests. So apparently the white nationalists are putting out tons of false stuff on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Kind of crazy how that happens, huh? But Antifa. Yeah. Twitter's taking down spam accounts run by white nationalists as the platform grapples with attempts to disrupt protesters organizing over the killing of George Floyd. Wow. Tonight's the night, comrades. Tonight we say, fuck the city. And we move into the residential areas, the white hoods, and we take what's ours. Reads a tweet punctuated with a brown raised fist emoji that was posted Sunday afternoon by the account Antifa_US. The tweet was taken offline for inciting violence, but something else was wrong with the account. Twitter discovered the account was not run by a purported supporter of anti-fascism, but rather a white nationalist group called Identity Europa, which has since rebranded as the American Identity Movement. The group and its founder, Nathan Domingo, are perhaps best known for helping to plan the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, North Carolina, which led to the death of counter-protester Heather Heyer. Twitter says it has now taken down hundreds of accounts related to Identity Europa. Still no Antifa super soldiers. Weird, huh? But surely, this is just all the prep work. Surely, when the shit, hits the fan and the boots get onto the ground, surely that's when the dreaded Antifas will pop up. Hey, let's see. Look, a local radio station actually fact-checked to see if the Antifas incited violence. I must admit my ignorance. I'd never heard of Antifa until about a week ago when it had been claimed they were inciting violence. So let's see. Sheriff in Illinois had to make a statement after rumors began to swirl through the small and rural community of Sparta, Illinois. Yes, because of course, white nationalists are going to go out of their way to freak out people in Sparta. Antifa terrorists were coming there to burn farmhouses and kill livestock. The sheriff's office has received reports concerning an article that's been circulating on social media regarding the destruction of farm property and livestock in or around the Sparta area. The article cites, quote, Antifa support, suggesting members of the, quote, terrorist organization to be out in full force. Sheriff's office personnel have reached out to law enforcement authorities specializing in this type of threat. We have no evidence leading us to believe this threat is at all credible. It would appear that the author's goal is to place fear in our community members, thereby creating fear and discontent. Wow. Okay, so no Antifas, just a lot of white nationalists posing as Antifas. Okay, any minute now. Members of a far-right advocacy group pose as Vice News reporters to get protesters to identify themselves in D.C. VDare, a far-right anti-immigration nonprofit, hosted a live stream where they asked anti-racism protesters to identify themselves by name and on camera. While doing so, the organizers told the protesters they were reporters for Vice Canada. The move came as President Donald Trump has promised to designate Antifa as a terrorist group. So, still no Antifas, but any minute now. Go! KKK leader charged for attack on Black Lives Matter protest. Prosecutors say Harry Rogers, 36, drove recklessly towards a protest in Henrico County and revved the engine before driving into protesters. Mr. Rogers appeared in Henrico Court on the outskirts of Richmond on Monday facing charges of assault and battery. A hate crime investigation is underway. Well, he certainly seems nice now, doesn't he? In a separate incident on Sunday night, a man drove at a crowd of protesters in Seattle and brandished a gun at them. The suspect's now in custody. While a 27-year-old man who was shot was taken to the hospital. So no, two more, still no Antifas. However, Mr. Rogers told officers he was a president of the Virginia Ku Klux Klan, the highest-ranking member of the white supremacist order not in prison. Wow. Okay. So definitely not an Antifa super soldier. Lancaster officials say armed agitators, white nationalists, inciting violence at George Floyd protests. I am very concerned. Please do not bring your children downtown. We have seen with our own eyes the agitators that were in the ground. Police chief said the police have definite evidence that the white nationalist groups were among the crowds of people who demonstrated over the weekend in response to the death of George Floyd. He said some were wearing body armor and carrying handguns. Caucasian individuals threw rocks and bottles containing cayenne pepper at police. He said Lancaster police, along with state police and the FBI, are reviewing extensive video footage and witness accounts to try to identify the agitators. Wow. That's very crazy, huh? Wow. So, still no Antifa super soldiers, but I'm sure any minute now, right? Oh! Minnesota's top officials believe white nationalists are using George Floyd protests as a cover for inciting violence. Let's see. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, and St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter, and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison took to the stage to share new information. Quote, the people that are doing this are not Minneapolis residents, Mayor Frey said. They are coming in largely from outside the city, from outside the region, to prey on everything we have built over the last several decades. Ellison cited a now viral video of a white man in a gas mask holding an umbrella who was caught by protesters breaking windows of a local AutoZone. Some believe the man to be an undercover cop, though that detail has not yet been verified. Cop. Mayor Carter says every single person arrested during the protests in Minneapolis on Friday night was from outside the state. And while there's a group of folks that are sad and mourning about Floyd, there seems to be another group that are using Mr. Floyd's death as a cover to create havoc. White nationalist groups are posting messages promoting that they are using the protests to go get our loot on and cause mayhem. Top officials discovered that the white nationalist mayhem starters are throwing incendiary devices and then running behind actual protesters to, quote, use them as a human shield. Vice reports that numerous militia, anti-government, and white supremacist groups have shown up to protests across America. The latter is allegedly hoping to use the tensions between them and law enforcement and the police to spark a race war. Still no Antifas, but any day now, I'm sure. Let's see what else we got. Oh! Damn it. How a tattoo helped Lancaster police identify white agitators at the protests for George Floyd. The phrase molon lab is Greek for come and take them. Spartan King Leonidas used it to demand soldiers lay down their arms. You know, in the totally non-weird, non-odd, totally rational movie for men to worship, 300. Yeah. It's where most people know it from, especially in the white nationalist movement. But I digress. Let's continue. It's also become a rallying cry for pro-gun activists, white nationalists, and the alt-right. And it's how Lancaster police identified the, quote, suspicious white agitators who infiltrated Sunday's protests in downtown Lancaster to instigate violence during a largely peaceful demonstration. They were wearing tattoos with the phrase or symbols for Molon Lab. Lancaster City Council President Ishmael Smith said on Smart Talk radio program, it's popular with certain, in particular, pro-gun groups, certain conservative elements, and white nationalists. Oh, okay. Still not Antifa. Oh! Looks like it's also happening in Pennsylvania. Crazy, huh? I've been on the ground for 3 days in Philadelphia. I'm disturbed by what I'm seeing. said national expert on race relations and the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Rights Commission. Looting, destruction, fires recently overtook peaceful protests. Those peaceful protests are being hijacked, Pennsylvania officials say. What I saw was a coordinated effort of looting encouraged by white supremacists who hide behind signs demanding justice while promoting anarchy. Dun, dun, dun. Wow, he actually used white supremacists and anarchy in the same sentence. I'm sure that's not going to go over well. Police chief said police have, quote, definite evidence that white nationalists were among the crowd of protesters during the weekend. They were wearing body armor, carrying handguns, and Caucasian individuals threw rocks and bottles. Wow, this is amazing. Oh! Minnesota officials officially link arrested looters to white supremacist groups. Hey, wow. Governor Walz said he's authorizing full mobilization of National Guard. Later in the day, 2,500. Let's be clear. Department of Safety Commissioner John Harrington said they are contact tracing the arrested and adding an investigation is underway about white nationalist groups, posting online to encourage their members to use the protests as a cover to create chaos. Said some of the 40 arrests made in Twin City Friday night were of people linked to white supremacist groups and organized crime. I have still not seen a single thing about the dreaded Antifas. So, I think it's worth noting here that all the talk about the dreaded Antifas are Trump's way of taking the attention away from the white nationalists who are his core base and the hardest, strongest portion of his of all the people who worship him. This is why he called the people who protested in Charlottesville that some of them were, I'm sure, very fine people. You know, even though they marched under a Nazi banner and chanted blood and soil while carrying torches and pitchforks. So I think the last thing that's really important to mention here is that after all this and all the hype and hullabaloo about how the dreaded Antifa super soldiers are going to come and eat your babies and they're responsible for all the chaos and there is no racial problem in America and it's just these damn leftists who are trying to, exacerbate and create a race war in America. So just a reminder for you, Donald Trump will be holding his first 2020 presidential rally. He will be holding it in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth, the anniversary of the single worst mass murder of black and brown people in the entire history of America. He will literally be giving a speech about how awesome he is on that ground, in that state, on that date. And if you have any questions as to where he stands, that speech is being written by Stephen Miller, who is quite possibly the biggest of all the white nationalists in the current regime. So, before you go believing the hype about the dreaded Antifa super soldiers and, all the enemies on the left, I just want to remind you that literally every single story coming out of all these protests about white agitators have turned out to be white nationalists, not Antifa and not the left. And Donald Trump is going to congratulate them by giving them their biggest rally of the year on one of the days that is most sacred to black people in America. So, very on brand, very peak Donald Trump. That's what we have to look forward to.